Hey everybody, welcome to the Never Board of Trade podcast. I am Vijai Singh. Unfortunately, Jaipaul is traveling at the moment, so you just have me, but we have a very special guest, Aaron Binder from Better Way Alliance. This is episode, 28 now? And, I've been talking to Jaipaul we've had a number of conversations. So it's always nice to mix it up, have a guest as well. And I think this is long overdue. We've known each other for a couple of years now, and I've wanted to do a podcast with you for a while. I think you're really interesting. I think the organization that you lead is really interesting. But yeah, so I'm really excited to get into this. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Better Way Alliance is? And you can introduce yourself if you want.
I'll do that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do like being a mysterious kind of man, but that was a young me. I'm ancient these days. Anyway, I'm Aaron Binder, Better Way Alliance. We are Canada's progressive business group, and we focus on things like what are the impacts of a holistic approach on business. We know a lot of business groups go out there and they'll write a great report, and then they'll say the solution here is tax cuts.
Yeah.
Let's cut taxes. And that can be the right solution sometimes. But our approach is, well, we know two things for sure. When we invest in workers, we're investing in our business. And when we make those kinds of investments, that's also investing in our communities, creating a virtuous cycle of success for us as business owners, for our workers, and for the communities that we operate in. Yeah. So this is something that we've known for literally thousands of years. It works. And so we're out there saying, here's how you can make these investments. We do research. We build and develop tools for other businesses to be able to make these changes, to be able to succeed and thrive, especially during this chaotic period that we're all living in.
Yeah, no, that's great. And what I love about Better Way Alliance, so I met you a couple of years ago at an event you were doing with the Kensington Market Land Trust. And what really stuck out to me was, I think it was you or someone on your team described yourselves as an alternative chamber of commerce. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really interesting. And then in getting to know you, I learned about the origins of Better Way. And, that CFIB kind of came out against minimum wage. And it was this really cool sort of moment of kind of challenging this dominant narrative that business inherently is going to be at odds with things like increasing the minimum wage and labor protections and yada, yada, yada. Could you tell us a little bit more about that minimum wage piece?
Yeah, that was where we started back in 2017. And at that time in Ontario, the minimum wage, the Kathleen Wynne Liberal government was looking at increasing the minimum wage by $4 an hour. And a lot of the traditional business groups came out and said, this will kill business. Yeah. And there were about 40 businesses in Ontario that grouped together that became the Better Way Alliance and said, actually, we are already in low-wage industries, tourism, hospitality, restaurants, manufacturing, and we already pay far above what the proposed minimum wage is going to be, and it works. It works.
Yeah.
So they got out there and they got loud and said, this narrative that is being put out here by these other business groups, it's just wrong.
Yeah. And
what we saw after the fact, there was a study put out in 2022 by the CCPA, and they're a think tank, Canada-wide.
Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And they came to the conclusion that there were over 100,000 full-time jobs created after this.
Oh, wow.
Because people had more money in their pockets to spend.
Yeah.
And that created that virtuous cycle where when you've got more money in your pocket, you tend to spend it locally is what we know statistically happens. So that money that was flowing into people's pockets was flowing back out into these local businesses that rightfully were worried. It was a big change. Yeah. But on the other side of it, we've seen a lot of, the pandemic happened. Yeah. Had that not happened, who's to say where we'd be right now, but we certainly can point to this minimum wage increase as something that brought a group of businesses together on a unique piece of advocacy. And now we dive into other elements of advocacy like paid sick days. Yeah. What's the effect on a stable schedule on your workforce? How do we make these investments without it being scary? What are the fundamental ways we can teach business owners to run a better business that sets them up for success, that sets their workers up for success in their communities. So that's what we do.
I really identify with that, because when I entered this role at the Brampton Board of Trade, I was expecting a level, when I was doing my stakeholder engagement, talking to members, I was expecting a level of the issues that would arise would be, related to taxation and red tape and all of that. But I was surprised to learn, I say this all the time, the top 3 business concerns in Brampton are housing, transportation, and a bucket that we call like worker access, but really can also relate to immigration and all these things. And those are not sort of top of the list, at least, business concerns. If you were to read, the media, Financial Post, whatever, right? You would think that the issues facing businesses are less community driven and more sort of germane to their industries. But when I learned about Better Way, I thought it was really interesting that there is this organization that's challenging this narrative around business, and I want to actually explore that a little bit, because I think it's one of the sort of great. I don't know if it was like a deliberate kind of campaign, or if it was sort of this happy accident, but the right. And when I say the right, I'm talking about this sort of coalition between all of the actors that are interested in deregulation and maximizing profits and all of those things. The sort of the greatest achievement is dominating the narrative around business, and that business is going to be at odds with these social policies. Let's say, how do you feel about that?
Well, I think most chambers of commerce are 3 corporations in a trench coat.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that's right or wrong. That is just the reality. As a business owner myself, I've been member of many business organizations, and a lot of them push this type of narrative, and there can be some good that comes out of that, just to be clear. But when we look at what the social impact is on business, we can't just say tax cuts are the be all end all. And once again, there is a time and a place for a tax cut. It can make sense. But what we have to look at as business owners, as business organizations, is, are our people happy? Are they healthy? Can they afford to put food on their table? If we can't meet those basic elements, we've failed as a culture. And what I mean by that is, without a healthy, happy workforce, our businesses suffer. There are only so many hours that a business owner can reinvest into their business if they've got a poorly operating workforce. So we look at these systemic fundamental issues of healthcare, of transit, of pay, of benefits, of everything that you would want to have yourself, whether you're a business owner, working at Chrysler, or just working at McDonald's. These are the fundamental things that everybody should have. So we look at that as integral to business culture in Canada and across the globe, because it is integral to how we all operate as a society.
No, it's something that we certainly believe in as well. And thank you for doing the good work there. It's interesting because I find with the tax cut dialogue, it is effectively, we learn in economics class that tax cuts are mathematically the same thing as providing a subsidy. It's expansionary fiscal policy, right? Zoran Mamdani, I just read that they're on their way to balancing the New York's budget because he's raised taxes on the rich, so to speak, right? And that's really interesting to me, because the idea of fiscal discipline is something that is often attributed to the right, but when you actually start to investigate these governments, look at how they operate, you could make the argument that many of them are wasteful spenders because they're unwilling to raise taxes on populations that could potentially afford those increased taxes. So I'm sort of wrestling with that a little bit, sort of trying to unlearn these ideas that are communicated to us. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, for sure. I lived in Toronto for 20 years through John Tory, through Rob Ford, and through half of Olivia Chow's tenure as mayor. And one of the things that we will often see in North American governments at all three levels is this desire to say we're fiscally responsible. We're doing what's right. So we're going to cut taxes. And when you actually dive into those details, those tax cuts come at a big cost in the long run. And we're also cutting taxes on the wrong people. So when I hear an advocacy organization going out there and saying, well, if we cut taxes on the wealthy, it'll trickle down. That's some bullshit. That never happens. When we raise taxes on a very privileged group of people, even if it's 1%, let's say, they're not going to notice it. I wouldn't even notice it. When that happens, you are able to reinvest that money into the people who have been squeezed since the 1980s, and even a bit before that, when Reaganomics took over the US and Thatcherism took over in England. We started putting more and more of that tax burden on the middle class and even the lower class. And we started giving more and more tax breaks to the wealthy. We even glamorized it. We even glamorized these tax cuts for the wealthy and said, maybe one day that'll be you if you just work hard enough. That's bullshit too.
It is.
That never happens. That's not how it works. You can work, the hardest working people I know, they're making 40, 50, 60K a year, busting their asses 80, 90 hours a week in a little industrial complex out in Brampton, out in Downsview in Toronto, out in Hamilton. They don't get this glory because they are so focused on just making sure that their family has some food on the table. They're never going to have the ability to become a billionaire because they don't know how to exploit people that way. So we have to.
Or they were born in the wrong family or whatever. Like it's so circumstantial. Actually, the Malcolm Gladwell Outliers book really cemented that idea in my head, of this idea that, you know, we have this view on history that it is a few great men who are holding up the world's greatest inventions and innovations. But, you know, Bill Gates was able to create Microsoft because he had at a time that access to computing was computers was very rare. He had an inordinate level of access to computers. And so much of the great successes we attribute to these few great men are, and often white men, are a result of the social infrastructure that has allowed them to do what they do.
We never would have gotten to the moon without black women. And that story is finally coming out like 7 decades later.
Absolutely.
So I look at, I look at this from the perspective of most people just want to do good work, have a good family, have a good community. And when we glamorize these kinds of really rich pillars, so to say, it's glamorizing the wrong thing.
No, I agree.
What we should be glamorizing is exactly this. Just go do good in your community, go do good with your family, go do some good in your business. And that's the fundamental building block of a great society, is making sure that everybody is provided for. We've all been down on our luck at one point or another, and that's why we have social safety nets in Canada. I firmly believe we can enhance a lot of those social safety nets because we've taken away a lot from them over the years. We're not going to all become successful by trying to become Mark Zuckerberg.
No, exactly. No, I completely agree. I want to talk a little bit about the specific pillars of Better Way Alliance, and we'll talk a little bit about the joint advocacy day that we're doing on May 26th, because I think that'll be very interesting to folks. But a big part of what you do and advocate for is commercial rent protection. And so I'll pause there. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So I'm going to go back before I joined the BWA in 2022. Before that, I was business association president in downtown Toronto. And we were one of the first groups during the pandemic in 2020 to develop data points on what was happening at the ground level to businesses in March, April 2020. And what we saw even during those months was that there were rent negotiations happening between commercial tenants and landlords. And a lot of landlords looked at this as an opportunity to, perhaps remove some tenants that they didn't like. This is what actually got me going on commercial rent, was when I was the president of the Corktown Residents and Business Association. By May, June, July that year, we started seeing rent increases in 2020 of like 50, 70, 100% during this great chaotic period of our time. We were seeing these businesses getting squeezed.
And why, I guess, is...
I couldn't tell you, because there were a lot of vacancies after that fact.
I was just thinking that, Interest rates were low, so presumably the carrying costs were, I mean, they're never low, but more manageable. And then the tremendous number of vacancies in and around Toronto.
Yeah, it was staggering to see how high the vacancies climbed so quickly. And some of these businesses were naturally exiting because of burnout, because of it just wasn't viable anymore. But I have to imagine, because I heard the stories from a lot of these business owners, that they were just being squeezed. And I think, a landlord is a business as well. And their goal is profit. There isn't much of another. Some landlords have the goal of building good community, and I really like those ones. I talk to them all the time, and they see a long-term vision. I know you got a few good ones in Brampton here as well that see this downtown revitalization that you're going through as a great opportunity to invest in the community and pass on some legacy. And I don't think that's enough. I don't think there are enough people like that, and we need more. So that got me going onto this. And in 2022, I joined the Better Way Alliance. And this, the former director had just published a commercial rent report. It's like 60 pages, lots of graphics. So it's not actually a boring 60 pages. And what that revealed was just how volatile this is to exist as a business, as a brick and mortar business in any kind of city, town, even rural area in Canada, North America. There are few protections, if any at all. And we identified this as one of the key drivers of stagnation in not just the business economy, but the jobs economy too. So we look at this as very deeply tied together. If we can't afford to pay the rent because it just went up 100%, we can't afford to give raises, we can't afford to pay people. In fact, we may have to lay off folks at businesses. And that to me is like a long, slow decline driven by profit, which is, I'm of the opinion that profit can be used for a lot of good purposes, and it should be. But when it's just driven for the desire of more profit, no good comes of that for anyone in society.
So I think undergirding all of this is this idea that when you are renting a residential property, there is a standard lease agreement in this province that landlords must abide by. It provides a basic level of protection for tenants, and there is that infrastructure around the tenant to ensure that there are good living conditions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, that does not exist for commercial tenants. There's no standard lease agreement for commercial. To lightly challenge you for a moment, because I bring a lot of my friends on here, and Jaipaul and I agree on almost everything. But why is that the solution? The legitimizing of the landlord-tenant relationship, as opposed to something like, I don't know, a democratic model like a employee ownership trust or community land trust, as an example, where the mom and pop business owners, they actually own the property, they cut out the landlord entirely, they have more autonomy and sovereignty to do what they want to do. What's your response to that?
So I think you've identified two issues at play here. We've got what has happened over the last few decades is massive consolidation in land ownership in Canada, residential, commercial, and industrial. And that means there are fewer and fewer hands holding these huge assets, trillions and trillions of dollars worth of assets. That means those mom and pop shops, it's harder for them to actually buy a property. It's been hard for them to buy a property for a long time. This is something we advocate for federally, is to make it easier to acquire a loan so that you can just exit the market yourself.
Absolutely.
We also want to make it easier for community land trusts, for employee ownership trusts, for all of these kinds of what some would call alternative models to thrive and succeed, because there's definitely a place for them here. Look at Kensington Market Community Land Trust. They bought their 3rd building last year. They were actually able to lower the rent for the commercial and residential tenants in the building they bought, because they don't have the profit motive that a lot of these other companies do, like REITs, who need to now show an 8 or 10% return every quarter. That eventually cannibalizes your own property to the point where that is not a sustainable return over 10, 20 years, unless you're doing creative accounting or being really cutthroat. So we do want to see more property ownership by local business owners, those mom and pop shops. We also want to see more of these alternative models come to the forefront. But to be realistic about that is such a small sliver.
It is, yeah.
It's such a small sliver.
I agree.
So we do need to look at protecting Main Street tenants, especially as this land consolidation continues to accelerate. We're in this K-shaped economy now where even your average folks are having trouble saving money. We're one of the most indebted nations on the planet from a consumer debt perspective. While that happens, we're also seeing that the rich are getting richer, and they're sharing less of that wealth with the rest of us because they need it for some reason. So what we need to do there, and why we advocate for these ground level protections, is to make sure that those folks that hold all of these assets, these land assets, they have billion-dollar legal teams. They've got all this power, all this money. That coffee shop owner showing up to negotiate with RioCan, that is not the definition of what you would get in a free market.
No.
A free market negotiation is defined by 2 people on an equal footing showing up at the same level of sophistication. That does not happen. Your average business owner has no idea what's going on in a 70-page lease, much less a 5-page lease. So standardizing this would go a long way to protecting that business owner and even the landlord. So the ideas we talk about, from standard leases to affordable dispute resolution to normalizing rent increases. These are not just one-sided things. We talk about them from the perspective of actually creating a more cohesive economy for everybody that acts within it.
Absolutely.
That's your business owner, that's their employees, and that's the landlord as well. So I look at that from the perspective of, this is actually good for everybody.
I agree.
Except for the sharks. And they got enough.
Totally. I completely agree. And I think there's a level of realism that needs to take root, I think, where we acknowledge that there are certain systems and institutions that are at play that we have to work within and navigate. And maybe the end goal is, community land trusts everywhere, and employee ownership trusts, and eventually after that, classless society, if you will. But the road to get there needs to make space for these tangible, material, sometimes technical changes, so that we can get closer to something that is more prosperous for all. So completely agree with you there. And it's interesting too, because I think I can imagine there are some businesses that might look at a standard lease agreement and they say, well, I have a sweetheart deal for my landlord right now. I have a handshake deal. I actually don't like the idea of putting it on paper, and but the reality is, as you said, similar to the community land trust piece, and this is a small sliver of the market. And I'm really grateful to these landlords who are community builders, but ultimately the vast majority of the situation is not that. And they could benefit from a lease protection of some sort.
And I think, like, I talk to a lot of these folks that say, well, I'm good. It's kind of that whole "fuck you, I got mine" thing. It's really short-term thinking.
Yes.
And as you said, like, long-term, we can build the best society we've ever had on this planet. But it does require these steps along the way. that may seem pretty unsexy, and let's be frank, they are pretty unsexy.
Yeah.
But when we take these little steps along the way, and they might take 5 or 10 years to implement, we're looking, I know you think this way. I know I think this way. I'm not thinking about what happens in 2 years. I'm thinking about what happens in 20 years.
Yes.
And to me, that better society is equitable. It means everybody has access to capital. It means everybody has access to what they need to live the version of their life that they've deemed the best life without harming themselves or others. And we've glorified so much of this fuck you, I've got mine attitude since the 1980s. And you look at Zoran Mamdani in New York, there's a reason he won. People are fed up with this. They see exactly what's happening every day, how they're being nickeled, dimed, and screwed by the wealthiest of the wealthy that already have enough. These dragons need more and more of our wealth. They suck it out of our communities and then say, well, you should be lucky that I didn't take more. So when I look 20 years from now, it's not just a reversal of that trend. It's actually a perspective shift toward the trend of let's live in a classless society. Let's make sure everybody has what they need. And fundamentally, let's build from the ground up instead of saying, I'll take these scraps today and hopefully you still give me some tomorrow. I got really philosophical real quick.
That's what I wanted out of you. So it's great. That's excellent. Let's talk a little bit about our Queen's Park Advocacy Day. So we're planning, first off, let's talk about what that looks like. But we're planning a really cool visit to Queen's Park on May 26th with some of our member businesses. And we're setting up some meetings with folks who work at Queen's Park, MPPs and senior civil servants to talk about some of our priorities. And then we'll host a reception in the evening as well. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Better Business Day and the thinking behind that?
Yeah, so Better Business Day, we started this in 2023, I think it was. So this will be our 4th iteration. And what that looked like then was, a lot of advocacy groups, a lot of business groups, fire chiefs will go to Queen's Park and they'll say, here are the 2 or 3 issues that are impacting our constituents. And we are a Canada-wide, we're small, but we're a very impactful organization Canada-wide. We have a lot of membership in Ontario, and we've really drilled down over the last couple of years on what are the key issues facing businesses. And we were really happy to start developing some ideas in tandem with you this year at Brampton Board of Trade, because we are, like you, looking at the fundamental issues of what creates a good business community. So transportation, we need to make sure our workers and our business owners can get to work easily and on time. I tell this story all the time. One of my businesses just turned 20 last year. And about 10 years ago, we started tracking how long does it take our employees to get to work? Back then, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 20, 25 minutes. 2026, 45, 50 minutes. So you get a workforce that shows up a little drained, not performing as well as you want them to. And this is a drain on productivity. With governments at all 3 levels in Canada so focused on productivity, transit's a key element of making sure that we have a healthy, productive workforce showing up. The other issues that we're, of course, bringing, we get double taxed on insurance. As much as I don't deal with tax policy a lot, that's uncool.
This is really interesting. This is something that I learned through you, and it wasn't until we started this exercise. But it's this wild situation. I'm surprised nothing has been done about it. But there are 2 taxes: the insurance premium tax, I believe, and then the retail sales tax, that are applied to insurance premiums. What's going on there?
So CFIB actually wrote a really good report on this in 2024. And they highlighted this, and especially in Ontario, compared to any other province, I believe this is the province with the highest insurance tax. So every business from 0 even to 1,000 employees is paying this double taxation. So what we're looking at is saying, well, let's get the government to change this for the smallest businesses. Let's launch a pilot for micro businesses. 0 to 10 employees. you're probably looking at an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a year in taxation there. And that's not a huge amount, but as you've probably heard from businesses, as I've heard from a lot of businesses across Canada, we're all experiencing this death by 1,000 cuts right now, where we've seen our rent, our utilities, our insurance, our cost of goods just trickle upward, or skyrocket upward. So all of these costs keep adding up.
Yeah.
So any bit of relief right now is helpful.
Yeah.
And this is a very direct, tangible way that the Ontario government can provide direct relief to the businesses most exposed to the marketplace shocks that we're all experiencing. So that's why I was excited to bring this forward. CFIB supports it.
Yeah.
We don't always agree on everything, but this is one where we're like, guys, you did this is a great start.
Yeah.
So we want to bring it home. And I think it's a really interesting opportunity to bring relief to the 77% plus businesses in Ontario that have 1 to 9 employees.
Totally. Including, I mean, you're a business owner. I technically have a business as well. I'm the only employee. I also pay insurance. So I didn't realize I paid these 2 taxes until you brought it up, and I was like, whoa. But I think that's great. And then the last piece is the commercial rent reform as well. That's your sort of staple flagship policy there. And so I think those are honestly fantastic priorities. And I'm really grateful that you made space for us to speak a little bit about our big priority, which is around transportation and regional transit at that. The 2 big ones for us is ensuring that we reinstate our commitment to electrifying the GO network and ensuring that we can. It's great that we're adding new stations on to these lines, but this actually will slow down these lines if we don't commit to increasing the speed and increasing electrification and also frequency. So that's a big piece. But then the other piece as well, and this is something that TTC Riders has sounded the alarm on. It's and this is the case as well in Brampton, but municipal transit agencies are finding it increasingly difficult to keep up with operation and operating costs for their transit. And it used to be the case that the provincial government provided a 50% subsidy to transit agencies. That was cut during the common sense revolution under Mike Harris, and like many other things, municipalities have had to shoulder an inordinate cost balloon as populations have increased. So that's a big priority for us as well. And then we're going to do a reception after too, which is always great. And we're going to invite some friends and allies to that, and other MPPs that we wouldn't have met during the day. So that's also an opportunity to share.
Yeah, I think these are always really interesting days because you go in there with a team of delegates. You have these meetings that are 30 minutes long. It feels like it's over like this. Because it is. And then, you end up having the non-alcoholic beer at the reception. And it's over in a flash. But the labor that the delegates put in, that those business owners put in, that you put in, that we put in, a lot of action really comes from these days because it puts a lot of issues that are back burner or not even on the stove onto the stove.
Totally.
So
and there are a couple of issues that we wanted to include, but we couldn't because life, events, right? One of those is pharmacare. And I want to talk a little bit about healthcare, pharmacare specifically, because I was really excited about this. Of course, there were some by-elections and majority governments were obtained and whatnot. That is less of a priority now for the federal government. It seemed like we were kind of getting somewhere, especially with Danielle Martin, being such an advocate for this. So we were really excited. Unfortunately, that seems to be not a back burner issue, but strategically we're going to sort of retool on that. It's a business issue, 100%. Unfortunately, CFIB and the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, there are colleagues and friends, we disagree on this topic. I've spoken to member businesses of ours, and they all agree pharmacare is the cost of especially insulin and some of these more fundamental pharmaceuticals, drugs. They are a massive cost center for our country and for individuals who utilize these programs. So, or benefits packages and whatnot. So I think this is a no-brainer business issue. I'm hoping that we could, spend some of our time targeting the federal government around this and see if we can revive this issue at the federal level. I really credit you for doing a lot of that legwork as well to get allies on this.
Yeah, well, it's I remember when in 2020, the Trudeau government actually said, we're going to go ahead with this.
Yes.
My friend and I had actually just launched an advocacy campaign on this called Free Drugs.
Yeah, nice.
And the math just makes sense. In 2019, Eric Hoskins, who was the former health minister in Ontario, wrote a very long, detailed report showcasing just how much this would actually save taxpayers over the long run, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yes.
And there's a lot of truth to that statement when it comes to how we deliver healthcare in Canada.
Yeah.
So, especially in the case of insulin, I know a lot of folks that are paying $6,000 a year, or $4,000 to $6,000 a year, just so they don't die. And that's unreal. And when you look at who's starting businesses, it's often people in the margins. It's women, it's immigrants.
Yeah.
And in Brampton, you are actually one of the regions in Canada that has the fastest growing startup population of business owners.
Yeah.
So when we're not protecting our business owners or our workers through this kind of health benefit, that pressure lies on the rest of us to take up. It relies on us from a tax burden perspective. It relies on us from, these over time, this trickles down to food banks. It trickles down to mutual aid circles. And, we really think that the federal government didn't make a mistake. They just have to reconsider their position on this. With all of the country building that's going on because of the shocks in the United States, in China, and the rest of the globe right now, this pressure that's being put on Canadians and Canada as a country, we are rightfully, and whatever you agree or disagree with on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we're rightfully investing in Canada more than we have in a long time.
Yeah.
But, my grandfather, who's 93, kind of drilled this into my head over the last 42 years. If you've got your health, you've got wealth. And I think that applies perfectly here.
Yeah.
We can't have sovereign wealth unless we have sovereign health.
I like that.
So this to me is the biggest opportunity that the government federally has to invest in people in Canada. When I look at Australia, who implemented an actual universal pharmacare program for literally every drug in the 1950s, when you look at health outcomes across the OECD nations, they're number one, maybe sometimes number two on every single metric.
It's amazing.
And that's a big part of it.
It's amazing. Honestly, Australia is, I'd love to have a conversation with an expert on Australian economic history, because I think they've done so much right over there. And there's someone by the name of Paul Keating, who sort of at the time when all countries were liberalizing, the Thatcher era, Reagan era that you referenced, Australia did it too, but they did it kind of again building off of what we talked about. They recognized the writing on the wall. They understood that this was the changing. The world was changing, and they ensured that there were still social protections, wages were protected, and it's.
I'll give a shout out to labor unions here, because they had a huge impact in Australia during that period of time when the world was liberalizing.
Yes,
and we have some really good unions in Canada. I'm a union supporter. They have helped raise wages. They've actually built protections, not just for workers, but for business owners as well in Canada. And I think we really have to look at labor unions as natural allies on a lot of issues for business owners because of that.
I completely agree. All right, let's wrap this up. And what we usually do with these podcasts is we end on a lighter note, and we share something that we've been listening to or watching, something that connected with us in some way. I don't know if you've thought about this, but I can share first if you'd like. I've been actually, there's some weeks where I just don't watch anything, and I'm just head down doing my work. I actually have had the pleasure of catching up on a few films that I've wanted to watch and some shows. A big Marvel fan. I just watched the Punisher special presentation last night as well. But I did watch a film, The Devil Wears Prada 2, with my partner, and this was interesting because it was kind of a surreal experience where I'm watching this film, and the original came out in 2006, and that was a very specific time where there was this kind of, I don't know how to really describe it, but the idea of work being your identity was very important at that time.
Yeah.
I think now that's being challenged, and so I walked out of the theater with this mix of nostalgia, but also kind of like, is this even applicable in 2026 anymore? Like this is like a rom-com about a woman's relationship with her job. That's sort of what my friend described it as, and I was like, this is I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm just still processing the film in the moment that we're in, but it was just this like, it was interesting but strange movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the tail end of the whole woman goes to New York, works at a publishing house kind of era of movies and media. Yeah, that's really funny. You know, I'm a big music fan.
Yeah.
I used to play in a band, used to be a music journalist. And, you know, music's really been a foundational part of my life for a long time. And I'm going to give you not a music answer.
All right.
I just watched the 3rd season of Foundation, which is a great sci-fi series.
Whoa.
It was a series of books. The books are actually just okay.
Okay. Interesting.
But the series itself, the TV series, it's fantastic. It dives into a lot of social theory. It's the decline of an empire. What does that look like?
Okay.
And as millennials, we're seeing the decline of many empires on this planet in real time. So it's really interesting to me to see these contrasts play out. And it's just visually one of the most stunning pieces of media I've seen in my life.
Wow.
So
wow. Where can I watch this?
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Streaming somewhere.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Cool. Okay, interesting. Wow. Well, thank you. Thanks, Aaron, for coming down and for sharing all of that. I'm really excited for the Advocacy Day on the 26th. Huge fan of what you do at Better Way. And I'm glad that we could find common ground and ensure that our delegates, our member organizations, they have an opportunity to engage with the powers that be who make decisions. And you know, I think this is a form of civic engagement that I think a community like Brampton doesn't often have. So I'm really excited, and thanks for chatting with me, man.
Yeah. I think what you guys do at the Brampton Board of Trade really elevates a lot of the community here. I see the level of care and detail that you put into making sure your constituents have what they need to succeed. So I really appreciate the relationship that we've built over the last couple of years.
Thanks, man. And thank you for joining us for episode 28 of Never Board of Trade. You can listen to this and share and comment and disagree, whatever you like. But if you know someone who might be interested in what we discussed today, let them know that we'll be doing this every 2 weeks.